So yeah, this is part of FGI speaker series with Judy Zhu. Am I pronouncing it correct?
You are?
Awesome. So she's the CEO of Moneygirls, very big within women's financial literacy and getting them more into investing. So it's a really awesome cause that we really love at FGI. We really do appreciate you being willing to hop on here with us and offer a lot of information and kind of your insight from your career so far and your work with Moneygirls to our passionate viewers within FGI. So yeah, we'd love to just get a little bit more information about you, kind of your background, your story so far, and then we can learn a little bit about that as well.
Awesome. How will I have the chance to have any live questions at the end since I can't see anyone? How will that work? Just so I know.
Absolutely, yes. So right now we're streaming on YouTube, so we have our viewers on there, and they'll be able to put in the live chat any questions. We also have Remind as well, so they'll be able to send any questions my way, and then I'll ping them over to you and get right into that as well. And you're
Got it. Okay. Well, then please consider this as a dialogue, even though to me it feels like it's a monologue where I'm just gonna, talk out into the world. I would love it if there are questions and certainly showing interest in what I'm saying is wonderful. I am so excited to be here with you guys. I've been looking forward to this forever. While I am founding a company that unabashedly, embraces women and young women, please know that the way we think about this isn't necessarily by gender, but rather it's by sort of any level of diversity and whenever we are in the place of being the first in something, the first in the room, the first in a having a sphere of influence, the first of just trying something. So please consider kind of what I'm building and everything that I'll share with you with that lens. So I am probably going on to my 15th year in working in tech. So I graduated from business school right at the end of the financial crisis. So if any of you remember in 08, 09, when everybody felt like the world was ending, that's when I graduated business school. And then I don't know if many of you will definitely not remember this, but back in 2003, 2004, when there was the dot-com bubble burst,
Yeah.
That's when I graduated from college. So I love to graduate when the world is melting down. And so I say all that to show you that whatever you're going through right now, to the extent that you are entering something or leaving something during this year, during 2020, it must feel anxiety ridden, I'm sure, right? We have very little control over anything in reality, but we especially have no control right now. And so I just want you to understand that I completely empathize with that feeling of, I don't know how this is going to work out. Am I missing out on something that people who graduated or did things a year before me, was able to do? And so that anxiety, I think, is something that honestly, I feel like the earlier you sort of face some of these challenges, the better. But we can talk more about that. So I am actually Canadian. So I was born in China and then I moved to Canada when I was 9. So coming to the States was I did so for business school. And I think it's, one of those things that to the extent I've read up on French generation investors and certainly have spoken with many of the young people that lead this organization and understand that many of you sort of are in that phase of being the first to do, whether it's the first to invest, the first to choose your particular sort of field of study, the first to have an interest in a lot of these things. I honestly just see it as a superpower to be able to be the first kind of just to figure something out, I think is a set of skill set that you can really own going forward in all aspects of your life, right? To have had either parents or whoever it is be the weed whackers that have just like whacked all the weed out and you basically have followed, a pretty easy path, like great, lucky you, right? And to the extent that your life is that easy forever, great. But that's just not going to be the case. And so I have always thought that sort of the more challenges and the more kind of things that you've had to figure out that while you're in it really sucks, the more it is that you'll kind of just be unfazed as life gets more real and more challenges come your way, right? So right now, as an entrepreneur, I launched Moneygirls last year. And I'm doing that as somebody in my mid 30s. And as we all know, entrepreneurs, like, what do you think of? You think of that 23-year-old dude in a hoodie, right? You think about the very young people that just graduate from college. And from my perspective, I think doing this in my 30s and being sort of mid-career makes me so much more calmer as an entrepreneur, and makes me, like, quite frankly, much braver about tough conversations when you're talking to, people that question your idea, or criticize your idea, or even, quite frankly, not even criticize, have a lot of ideas. I'm much more centered about my mission, what I'm about to do, right? So I've been working in tech for a long time, consumer tech. I've worked for companies like L'Oreal, Amazon, Uber. Most recently, I spent a few years at Uber, which, I would do a whole other conversation with you guys about. But essentially, what I always knew to be true is that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to build a company that I just, think would be, the way that I would shape it from my point of view. Now, I think what many of you will do in the coming years, if any of you sort of have entrepreneurial kind of leanings in you, wonderful. But what's the truth is that most of us sort of think that we want to do something, but we don't have that, like, knock us across the head idea where, there isn't anything that I'm going to do now. I must do this. So keep your eyes open to what you think should exist in the world, and what your unique insight is of why others won't be as good as you to build it, right? And so, for me, I worked in tech for a long time. I worked in financial technology for a long time. When I was at Uber, I was building payment products, financial products. And finally, what I noticed was that in this world of financial technology and financial services, it was quite exclusionary towards, towards first-time investors, women. Obviously, many of them fall into that bucket. And for me, I thought about, who would I build this for? Should I build this for somebody in their 30s or 40s? It's not about age, but it's about life stage. And for me, I decided that I didn't have the patience to go and build a product for someone in my life stage, where I have to, like, convince the Judys of the world, don't be overwhelmed, don't be intimidated. It's really not that hard, and roll back like a decade of negative self-talk. I'd rather come up against, people like you, where you're just kind of launching into the world, launching into your professional lives, where you're like, yeah, no, I'm not that intimidated. I just need something and somebody to come and tell me how to do this, right? That kind of energy, that motivation, that matter of fact, no chip on the shoulder, like, let's do this, let's go, who's going to help me? That was the energy that I wanted to build Moneygirls around. And so last year, I jumped fully into entrepreneurship, which is never as glamorous as people tell you it is. And I'm building Moneygirls to be the place where people are unabashed to have money conversations. We all grow up. I know this to be a fact, right? We all grow up being like, well, don't talk about money. Don't ask about money. Yeah. And I'm like, well, how are we supposed to get smart on something that schools don't teach us? We certainly can't just depend, our parents will teach us, because it's not every parent that has that to impart on you. You can't talk about it, with friends or other peers. And then the only people that are there to kind of give you the tips are stodgy financial institutions that may, on the good end of it, just be really intimidating, overwhelming, and confusing. And on the bad end of it, trying to get you to do things that you don't even understand how you should be doing, right? And so I decided that that was something that needed to exist in the world. And so here we are. So that's sort of my, kind of journey into tech, and being the first, certainly, in my family to go to business school and to go into entrepreneurship in this way. So I thought maybe what would be interesting is if I kind of share with, so the ethos of Moneygirls is nothing we put out into the world is this sort of finger waggy, preachy way of looking at the world, where I'm saying, you should really think about retirement. And here you are as a 17-year-old being like, no. Like I'm just not going to. The way that we kind of operate is we have, the members of the Money Girls community just send us questions. And what's really blown me away is that we went out into the world in 2019, and in just less than a year, we've gotten like 1,000 questions submitted from, people like you, sort of in that kind of 18 to 25 year range. And so we only put out what you guys care about. We kind of answer things in very much of a Q&A way. We send out a newsletter just once a week because my goal is not to overwhelm. I don't need to receive anything every single day. I don't want to talk about money every single day. I'm sure you guys don't as well. But that idea of like once a week is just super light drip campaign of knowledge, which is why I love what you guys are doing, right? Like investing with just a few bucks when the stakes are low is so much more useful than to sit there when you're 29 and being like, what am I going to do with my $10,000 and feeling like it's the biggest deal in the world, right? And so because the ethos is Q&A, I thought maybe what's most interesting is for me to share with you what are the top questions that an 18-year-old or a 20-year-old sends to us. And so either that makes you feel like, oh, I actually kind of know the answer to that because I've been, involved with first generation investors for a while, which hopefully makes you feel good about yourself, right? Or you go, I don't know the answer, but I have wondered that. Well, there you go. Somebody who is like, just maybe a small life stage ahead of me is still wondering it. Or you haven't even had that question before. But what could be interesting is you go, oh, I didn't know I was supposed to ask that, but that's interesting that other people sort of, in a similar age group is asking about it. So those are all the reasons why I thought maybe sharing with you kind of the top questions as it relates to investing could be a fun way to have this conversation. So one of the first things that we always get asked is, should I be investing? Like, am I behind? And I think for you guys are definitely not behind. The fact that you are where you are, like playing around with it and starting to think about it is fantastic. But one of the things that we always hear about is when it's my own money, how do I know that I'm sitting there with enough cash that I should be investing? And the way we think about it is to the extent that you're starting to make a steady paycheck, right? You can count on it every month. There is going to be some subset of earnings coming into your bank account. That is 100% the time that you should start thinking about investing. And so what does that mean? You're going to have to save the amount of money that goes into keeping your life afloat, right? The expenses, what we call the needs bucket. And typically for most people, 50% of their earnings is just like, you're never going to get around it. 50% of their earnings is going towards keeping the roof over their head and the quality of life. So then what do you do with the other 50%? Then we go, okay, well, I mean, life is meant to be lived, right? I love this joke where, how everybody is always saying like the best things in life are free. I always joke about how the best things in life are really expensive, right? And so like you should embrace the fact that like, money's meant to be spent in the sense that we got to make memories, we got to have experiences, and we got to make life worth living. And so we think about it is 30% goes into your wants bucket. So 50% keeping you alive, 30% is the wants, right? Like I genuinely enjoy fitness or brunch with friends or whatever it is. So that leaves you the 20%. Now, that's the 20% that you should be thinking about. Should I be investing? Yes. If you consistently have, once life is covered and once, you're living kind of a fun life, that 20% is what can go into investing. So that's the first question we get, which is, when should I be doing it? And I just want to like debunk for everybody that there is no, you're 20, you got to start investing, right? Many of our 20-year-olds are like, literally every single penny that I earn is going towards keeping that roof over my head. Should I be investing? No, keep that roof over your head, right? And so that's how, we generally like to kind of have the conversation. And now the next question is, we always get, I'm sure some of you are, constantly thinking about this already. We get this question a lot of, I'm ready to invest. I've got $500. What should I invest in? And I think that question is sort of this. Half of it is, I keep hearing this thing about ETFs and funds and all of that. Like, what is that? We get a lot of, what should I be investing in? What is an ETF? And then we get another half a question that I think is coming from the energy of, give me some stock picks. right?
Yeah.
Which is, some like people definitely ask, like, what are some stocks I should be investing in? Now, I'm sure, you guys at FGI, you probably have had plenty of conversations about what does investing mean, right? Investing means wealth building.
Yeah.
Right? It means long-term wealth building. Money that if Judy were to take it away from you, you'd be like, I'm cool. I don't need it until I'm like 50 anyway, right? Like that's wealth building. Investing doesn't really mean day trading, right?
Yeah.
Which is like me giving you a stock tip. Peloton seems to be doing really well because everybody's working out at home. Go buy some Peloton. Like that's not investing, right? That's not wealth building. So now we still have people that are like, cool. Give me some stock tips.
Yeah.
And so the way that I like to think about it is like, to the extent that you've got $1,000, take 800, 900 and do the unsexy thing, which is the funds and the ETFs and that you're not supposed to touch it, right? Because that's wealth building. Like you want to be wealthy, that's wealth building. But that's cool. Take the other 100 and 200 bucks and have that as your stock picking money. Just understand it's your casino money, right? It's your betting money. It's your casino money. It's money that if it, disappeared for like a good year or two because your pick just wasn't good, or not even a year or two, forever, you're not going to cry about it, right? So that's how we sort of generally guide the whole, like, what should I be investing in? Definitely. Yeah. And by the way, right, like when I started getting into investing, if you told me to get into a fund that I'm never supposed to touch, I'm like, well, that's not that adrenaline payoff is not there.
Yeah.
And I am all for doing whatever feels sort of real because that's the only way that we build habits, right? And so to the extent that you're like, if I pick up a Nike, a Disney, a Peloton, and it's going to make me just like watch my stock market at more and like hear about S&P 500 going up, like, and just have a higher give a SHRT factor, I'm so supportive of that, right? There's no like shoulds in that sense. But just know that when it comes to wealth building, it really is this idea of having super broad exposure, which is what index funds, ETFs do for you. So that when pandemics happen, you're not getting this like whiplash of, I was all in on United Airlines stock, and that's, doing really badly. You're like, that's cool. I'm in a little bit on United Airlines stock, and that's not awesome, but I'm also in, 500 other stocks through my fund. So that's sort of how we like to think about it. And then maybe what I'll say is sort of the last kind of question that we get a lot, especially over the course of COVID, is a lot of people are hearing, whether it's from their parents or in the news, like, thank goodness that now, to be clear, the stock market is on fire right now, right? But back in March, everybody was hearing this is a good time to get in. And so people were always asking, like, what does it mean that it's a good time to get in? Or am I too late? Should I do it? Should I put it all in? Like, what day should I pick? And so what we always say is, no one, maybe one person, maybe Warren Buffett, like maybe one person for every million is actually going to beat the market, right? Like to do something that nobody else thought was going to happen. But that's not you guys. That's not me. Let's not do that. And so when we say, like, whenever we get the question of when's the best time to get in the market, we always say yesterday. Always yesterday, right? It's the same question as like, when should I start working out? Yesterday. When should I start eating healthier? Yesterday, right? Like it's all cumulative effect of start as soon as you can, and you're always going to ride it to the top. So when we say yesterday, we mean like literally, if you have 500 bucks, right? And you're saying, should I go into the market yesterday? We'll say totally. But think about it this way. If yesterday genuinely was a terrible day to go into the market because everything was really, really expensive, right? No, like think about it at the store, right? Yesterday was just the one day that nothing was on sale in the whole store. Do you really want to go into the store yesterday and be like, I'm going to pick up everything? No, you genuinely want to choose a day when some things are on sale, right? And so we don't know when things are going to be on sale. So take your 500 bucks and $100 in this week and then $100 in the next week. And the fancy speak of that is called daily cost averaging, right? You just like average your way, where some weeks you're going to win some weeks you're going to lose some, and you don't have any regrets. There's another thing, that term that I've actually only learned over the past year or so, which is regret minimization. Apparently, you guys, like, investing is a lot of what you're supposed to do in investing is around this concept of regret minimization. So it's so funny how investing, which I love that you guys are doing early, investing is like pretty heavily related to you understanding your personality,
Yep.
right? The reason why you go into a fund versus putting together your own portfolio of like 10 stocks is you're human. And when two of those stocks are going to do their thing, whatever the thing may be, you're going to freak out and do some very human action that is almost always not going to be to your benefit. But the thing is that, you know, when we start to invest, we start to get to know ourselves. Like, are we a risk taker or are we risk averse? Do we feel worse when we lose money, or do we feel worse when we don't gain money? There's a difference, right? One is you lost. One is you just didn't win, right? And so all those things are actually super interesting to understand about yourself. And then, like, really smart investors kind of build their investing portfolio around regret minimization strategies, because they know themselves and they're like, what am I going to do that allows me to not jump off a cliff? That is what I'm going to do. Right. And so maybe the last thing that I'll kind of share with you as it relates to investing and, quite frankly, into entrepreneurship is I get a lot of questions around this idea of fear. So, you know, women, not even women, just, you know, anyone kind of listening to an entrepreneurial journey. I get a lot of question around like how I'm scared to do it. How do I do it? When is the right time to jump? And it's all those things where I think the way that I view life is everything you're doing right now, the fact that you guys are like involved in FGI, you are busting so hard, like you hustle so hard to try to set yourself up for success. Everything you're doing is just going to make you better than someone who is not putting in the effort right now, right? And so you've got to trust that the effort you're putting in right now to set yourself up for success is going to be the scaffolding you need when you fall. And by the way, it's a when, it's not if, right? You're going to fall, you're going to fail. You're just like, life is going to just slap you upside the head a couple of times. Like, the way that I like to talk about entrepreneurship is it's a daily punch in the face. Every morning I wake up and I'm like, I wonder what is going to punch me in the face today and make me feel really stressed, disappointed, whatever it is, right? And so if you're putting in all this effort where you're, you know, trying to gain knowledge, trying to like just get a step ahead, that is the foundation that you need to be able to take risks. So don't do all this effort and hustle so hard and do all this for yourself and then say, but I'm not going to take any risks because what if I fail? Because when you fail, everything that you're doing is going to set yourself up for success. So the way that I think about things is failing up. How do you make sure that you fail up? Which means when you fail, you're not like you're destitute, no one will hire you, you're just like just worse than you begun. Obviously, there's going to be some things in the world that is like that. Don't do things like that, right? But this idea of like, let me try my hand at investing, let me try my hand at gaining a new skill, let me try my hand at like building something that I think should exist that doesn't exist. Well, all those are your opportunities to fail up. How? You meet the people, right? You talk to, I mean, I will always be on your team forever. So now that we've met and you're talking to me, please always feel free to reach out to me, right? But like, go meet 100 Judys, right? Who will say, well, okay, you failed, but guess what? Like 99% of the people fail. But the fact that you took the risk, that's amazing. I'm on your team. You should talk to my friend so-and-so who's hiring. Like, do the things that ensure you fail up, which often means networking, telling the world about what it is that you've done so that even if you failed, maybe somebody else can take a snippet of your idea and build it into something else, right? That's how I feel about investing as well. You can always stand there and be like, I mean, I don't think I can invest until I have $10,000, or I don't think I can invest until I've got $10,000 built into my emergency fund. I don't think I can, I mean, by the way, emergency fund, mucho importante during this time right now. So I'm not saying that that's not important, but this idea of like, just give it a shot. Just try. There is never going to be a perfect time. I launched the company in my mid 30s, and I'm telling you now that it was the right time for me because I've gained so many skills and I've thickened my skin and I built such a vast network of people who know me, who trust me, who know I can run through walls, that they're willing to invest in my company and back me. But that's also just my story, right? I can completely be open and vulnerable with you by saying that, like, do I kind of wish that I did it 10 years ago in my late 20s? Kind of, right? And had I failed or, or anything happened, I would be smarter for it because I would now be launching a company, having failed once and having had all those learnings. So even though I'm giving you a very nice packaging of my entrepreneurial journey, I'm also unafraid to tell you that, I 100% always wish that I did something sooner, earlier. The final thing that I'll say is, this is something that I actually really learned once I jumped into entrepreneurship, which is I'm like very protective of my idea and wanting to make sure that it's successful, wanting to make sure that I package it so that it's like beautifully successful every step of the way. And somebody told me that you want to do everything quickly, even if it means you're going to fail, you want to fail fast. Yeah. Right? You want the world to tell you, no, nobody wants this product. Nobody wants this business. Nobody wants you. Go do something else. Right? I'd rather do that than nurture and nurse something for like 4 years of my life and then come to the realization, oh, yeah, nobody wanted that. And because time is our most precious resource. And so, for me, looking at where you are in your life, I am so envious of how sort of low stakes that you have in trying things and failing fast. I will tell you, if you're sitting there going, no, Judy, you don't really understand. My fear of failure is real. I bet that what that actually is you've got ego, and you're like, well, the fear of failure, it's ego. There's no one that's going to look at any failures or any kind of hiccups or challenges that you face as a 17, 16, 18, 19-year-old and say, well, that defines your whole life, right?
Yeah.
It's all about you saying, look at all the good stories and all the good learnings. I would so much rather hire you to say, I failed at something and here's all the learnings that I've had, than talking to somebody else who's never tried, who's never put their butts on the line, who's never like said, I'm going to be accountable. Yeah, look at me, and then the buck stopped with me. Then than you who can say all those things. So go fast, go do all the things quickly, try your hand at everything and get major learnings. And that just makes you such an interesting person, right? Say yes to things. There's I don't know if you guys listen to the same podcast that I do, but I listen to a lot of podcasts where, how I built this, all these podcasts that really try to teach people how to say no, which I get it. In a world we're all so busy, like a lot of people don't know how to say no. They say yes to things, they spread themselves too thin, which I'm sure you guys in school often face. You're like, why did I say yes to that? That project is literally like giving me heart attacks and I wish I hadn't said yes to it. And I understand that, right? But I can also tell you that nothing big and nothing interesting in my life ever happened because I said no. So this idea of saying no, I'm just not into. I'm a say yes first and then figure it out later kind of person. And by the way, that means literally I will say yes to something and I'm like, I feel 30% qualified to do it, but I'm going to figure it out. I just trust myself to figure it out. And I just hope that that's sort of the energy that, that you kind of take on into the world. And like what a foundation FGI has set up for you, right? Where you're allowed to take a risk and learn a new skill with such a supportive network of, well, this isn't really you, putting $1 million of your entire net worth on the line, right? And so say yes to all the things right now and give it a shot. Learn what you're good at, learn what you're not, learn what you like, learn what you're not. That's all you really need to do for the next 5 to 10 years is what I think. This idea of figuring out what I'm really going to be good at, what I'm like genuinely better than average. I always ask young people, I'm like, tell me, what are you better than other people at? And there's always like this sort of humility where you're like, well, I don't want to say I'm better than other people. I'm like, no. Tell me, what skill set are you look at your left and you look at your right and you're like, I'm better than you and I'm better than you at that skill. Like, what is your superpower, right? Figure that out. And it's going to change. What is your superpower when you're 16 is going to be very different than what your superpower at 26, but there's going to be some themes that are going to be consistent. And once you know those superpowers, chase after every opportunity that allows you to flex that superpower. Pro tip, if you're ever sitting there being like, I don't know what my superpower is, right? Like you are just that humble, text 3 of your friends and ask them, if you were to tell me what is my, like 2 of my superpowers, like you love me, you're my friend, you're my hype team, tell me what's my most superpower, and get 3 of your friends to tell it to you. Either A, you will find a theme that all 3 of them will say that gives you a little bit more confidence. You're like, oh, if 3 people notice that about me, that must be true. Then I'm like pretty good at that, right? Or those are the things that you have never thought of, but wonderful that other people notice it in you. So now wear it, put that jacket on and step into it. Or you know what? It's something that you have like sort of felt it about yourself, but you were a little bit sort of shy or lacking confidence in living it. That now you will have all the things. So I could go on forever. I love like just talking about things like this, not in a way of I love talking about myself, but more in a way of I wish I could help you cut every corner that I possibly could for you and like shorten the learning where you don't have to, waste a year and a half in figuring something out where you only spend half a year. So I love talking like this, but let me save some time for Q&A in case anything that I've said kind of resonates with you in a way that you just want to have a dialogue on.
Awesome. Appreciate it so much. And I love that kind of way of thinking of, worst case scenario. I learn a lot, I fall forward, like you said.
You fail up.
Yeah, fail up, right? And I think it's so beneficial. One question we have coming in was, let's see. How did you bring that mentality of failing up, especially with your background in graduating from college and frankly very difficult times when it comes to searching for jobs? How did you bring that mentality into those kinds of climates?
Oh, that's such a good one. So when the going gets tough, you almost feel like you are delusional by being optimistic, right? Like I get that. So there's the way that I would think about it is when you put yourself out there and just meet people and talk to people, there's almost no way that that's not going to go well, right? I can't see you, but I'm just going to trust that you have EQ, you are presentable, and that you're not like a disaster when somebody puts you in front of somebody, right? So knowing that that is true, when you put yourself out into the world and you're like, I'm just going to meet Judy, or I'm just going to go meet somebody and I'm just going to get to know them, there is just no way that that's not going to go well. I'll tell you a story of when I graduated from business school. The company that I ended up joining was called diapers.com. And it was led by this fantastic entrepreneur that built diapers.com. We built the company to such a success that it was acquired by Amazon for $500 million. And then that entrepreneur went on to launch another company called jet.com. And then he sold that to Walmart for $3 billion, right? And so the way that I got onto the diapers.com team is I had actually interviewed with a woman who was like elsewhere. She and I met, and she was like, it's funny that I'm interviewing today because I'm actually resigning tomorrow to go to this company, diapers.com. But like, that's cool that you're in the interview process. It was nice to meet you. And, we'll keep in touch and good luck, right? In your interview with this company. She left to go to the new company. And then a week later, she emailed me and she's like, hey, do you remember meeting me when I interviewed you for this company? So I actually just joined an entrepreneurial company and I'm actually looking for somebody. I really enjoyed meeting you to the extent that you didn't get a job there. Do you want to come join me? And so that's what I mean, right? Like if you put yourself out there, apply for the things that you're only a little bit qualified for, right? Maybe they'll see something else in you that you didn't even see in yourself, right? Meet the people, talk to as many people as you can to talk about what interests you, what are you passionate about, what problem do you want to solve, what your experiences are, what are you good at. And then 90% of the time, it'll probably be like, well, that's great. Let's keep in touch. And then it won't go anywhere. And then the other 10% is just going to be spectacular things.
Brilliant, brilliant. Another question we have coming in here is, how are you currently pursuing your goal with Money Girls, your mission?
Oh, thank you for that awesome question. How am I pursuing my goals? So here's the thing, is that when you have a North Star, like when you're just saying, I think my life's work is to do X, Y, and Z. I have that very clear. Like I want to bring more inclusivity and equality into the financial space, right? That's my North Star. How I get there, I'm super open to, right? Here's like sometimes a challenge that a lot of entrepreneurs face, which is they build a company, they build a product, and they go, this product has to do this thing. And they're very precious about this product, right? And if somebody says, well, is this the right product? They're like, it's the right product.
Yeah, how dare you?
Super obsessive about it. Yeah. For me, I'm like, that's just my mission. Now, if somebody tells me, you should actually do it this way because it would allow you to scale faster or reach a demographic that I hadn't thought of or whatever it is, cool, let's do it, right? So I am clear about where I want to get, but I am very unprecious or protective about how I get there. So the way that I'm sort of achieving my mission is last year, I focused on just proving there's a power to the idea. So I threw myself in front of like every, Bobbies of the world, by the way. So I threw myself in front of every college student, every person who just entered college or is about to graduate from college, launching into the world and be like, do you care about money? Like, do you care about your financial life, right? Or do you only care about, like games and clothes, right? Like, do you care if I build a company that says I am out to help you run your own money so that you never feel overwhelmed, intimidated, and dependent on other people? And I proved out that there was power to the idea, that there was community of like a pretty large community of people that are like, yeah, I'm ambitious as hell. I'm motivated as hell. I want to do this, right? And so proved out the idea. And then in 2020 is when, because of COVID happening, especially you guys, is because we started getting so much engagement from people, right? People started asking the questions. The anxiety was high, which is like, what is emergency fund? What's going on in the stock market? Why is everybody investing? Why is everybody pulling out of the market? Like what all those things. So then we started getting enough insights into knowing, okay, what's next? And so I think that's how I'm pursuing it, which is like constantly keeping my ears open so that I almost like co-create with you, co-produce with you the financial brand of the future. So rather than Judy coming in and being like, what should exist? This thing, and you guys should use it. I'd rather have this co-production of let's build it together.
Sounds great. Sounds great. I love the attitude. It's kind of like pushing aside the ego, being open to different ideas, especially different ways to look at things. I come from a bit more of a finance background, right? So it's really easy to get stuck in ways of, oh, how do I look at this like a finance analyst, right? But then all of a sudden you bring someone from a different background and it's this whole refreshing new way to look at problems, and all of a sudden you create really creative solutions. That's
well, in finance especially, right? Like you can't be wrong in finance. Like numbers, they're a big deal, right? You can't be wrong. But in entrepreneurship, it's almost like a badge of honor to have been wrong about something, because you now have the learning, right? Like I always like to joke about how, how like successful people love to inspire you with their failure stories, right? Like failure porn, where they're like, I'm so like, I always joke about, I can't wait to be so successful that I just inspire other people with all the ways that I failed. Which now I'm like, I'm very open with all the things that I failed. And that's another thing is that like people are actually very open about all the ways that they were wrong, because look at what I've learned about my demographic. I mean, I'll share with you right now. One of the things that I thought was what, the Money Girls demographic needed last year is that I put out this message of like, that's awesome that you are on this track of learning about money and getting savvy. Like, look at you being head and shoulders above other people and like being better than other people. And the community was like, that's not really what I'm going for. Like, I'm not going for having a leg up, right? Like, I like being part of a community of other super motivated people that care about money. And so I'd rather like bring other people along. Like, I'd rather tell other people about it. And so that was something that I got. So I had to like change my, my copy and our like, when you go to our website, you're not going to see this like, look at you, badass, crushing things. Like, that just wasn't the energy that the people that joined Money Girls were going for. And that's, just something that I am so glad that I learned, rather than being like, I think that's what I'm out to do, and not, and being very inflexible.
Brilliant. What's your favorite part about running and working at Money Girls?
It's an excuse to meet interesting people. That is genuinely, like, if I could find a job where I actually never had to do real work, where it was never hard, and it allowed me to talk to interesting people where people would want to talk to me, I would do that, right? Rather than like working my, face off.
Yeah.
But I think the exchange is that, like, would I ever be in the orbit of Blake, of Aaron, of you, Bobby, of the FGI community if I wasn't doing this? No. Like, how would I know you and how would you know me, right? And other women that, like, fellow founders that are saying, hey, do you want to come to this happy hour? Or do you want to come speak at this event? Or do you want to meet so-and-so who's doing this? Like, that would just never happen. So genuinely, I think when you put your butt on the line and do some stuff, it makes you a more interesting person that other people want to be around, because you have interesting insights, you have interesting experiences. And honestly, like, that just makes life more fun. Yeah. Right? So candidly, my favorite thing about building this is my excuse to talk to interesting people that otherwise, why would they talk to me if I'm just at home baking? Although, I don't know, maybe they'd be interested in my baking craft.
You picked up any interesting hobbies with baking during COVID?
No, I don't. Not my thing.
Brilliant.
One of the things that I would love all of you to sort of decide in the world is, what are you going to be exceptional at? And then what are you going to be just really bad at and you don't care, right? Like, you can only be exceptional if you embrace the things that you're never going to be good at. Like, IKEA, they're exceptional at some stuff and they don't care that you have to put together, their furniture yourself. Southwest, they're exceptional at some stuff and they don't care that you're like, oh, it's just not luxury and whatever. And so I always think about that as a human, is be exceptional at some things. Choose what you're going to be exceptional at. And then the things that you're not good at, doesn't matter. Don't care about it. And for me, that's in the kitchen, right? And this is like, for any of you that have had internships or will have internships, and you do a performance review with your boss, right? They're going to say, Bobby, you're great at these things, and what you should work on is yada, yada, yada. For me, I'm like, the eyes that you should have is, okay, the things that I should work on, there's going to be some things that matter to you. You're like, yes, I should definitely work on that because that will make me like accelerate my success. And then there's going to be some of those things where you're like, I'm never going to work on them. Like, I don't care that I'm not good at that. And I think the only thing, otherwise you're like, I want to be great at the things that I'm great at and be better at the things that I'm not good at. Well, then you're just going to be mediocre. And I don't want you to be mediocre. I want you to be known for being exceptional at a few things.
Brilliant. So let's pivot a little bit before time runs out. I want to get a little bit of insight for our young students here looking to learn a little bit more about your career path. Try to put yourself into the shoes of Judy, fresh out of college, during the dot-com bubble. If there is one thing you wish you could have done differently, or maybe not even done differently, because often when I ask people this question, they're like, "Oh, I want to keep everything the same, right?"
Yeah, because my life, my path. Yeah.
Something maybe you wish you would have known, or you would have really loved to know about. Today, looking back, obviously hindsight is 2020, but we're really looking to give as much insight from successful people like you, to our students who are really beginning their path to success now.
Yeah. The things that I have realized about myself is, especially so over the course of my career, I've actually worked with a lot of like really exceptional senior leaders, helping them kind of accelerate into the C-suite, and all of that. And what I've realized is everybody is just trying to figure it out, you guys.
Yeah.
No one has it set. The fact that I now like will talk to, whatever, a 41-year-old CEO, and I hear the things that are coming out of their mouths and all their insecurities and the things they don't know and the whatever. I go back to the 16-year-old version of myself where I'm like, oh my God, they were God in my eyes. Like
Yeah.
that, that level of holding people on a pedestal is something that you do not need, right? Which is why I'm like so open with you, because you're like, oh my God, Judy, like, no, the things that if you could have a view into the things that go in my brain, you'd be like, oh, really? So what I tell sort of every young person is no one is better than you at anything. They're maybe more experienced. They've done it a couple of times. So they're like, I'm just not going to do that because I've done that before and it did not work out. So I'm going to do this. Or, I speak in a more polished way, but only because when I spoke in a different way, I had a couple of learnings that this word is more effective than that word and all of that, right? But that's just all experience. So what I wish I knew when I was 15, when I was 16, is that no one has it more figured out than you do. And therefore, what does that mean? That means that you should always be open to share your insights, do it in a respectful way, but share your insights, share your opinions. Anytime you're hired into anything, they saw something in you. So don't be quiet, because it's your obligation to share your insights when somebody hired you. It's not your obligation to fall in line and just do the quiet thing. It's your obligation to contribute, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is always feeling like, well, I'm not ready because look at these fabulous 40-year-old people who are so much smarter than I've got to wait until I'm 40. No, you don't. And so that's the main thing, is no one has it figured out at all. Everybody is just trying their best.
Brilliant.
And faking it a lot of the time.
Yeah, I mean that was frankly huge for me. When someone told me, you realize if you take a look into other people's mind, you realize most of the people around you often have no idea what they're doing, or they're still trying to figure things out. It definitely is a big game changer for you.
Exactly. Now, be somebody who is not racked with insecurities as soon as you can, right? And by the way, I'm not saying don't be insecure. Please, somebody tell me, a 16-year-old me, to not be insecure, I'm going to be like, thank you. Like, not going to happen, right? That's fine, but go through it. Figure it out. What makes you insecure? Where do you feel like you're not as good as? And get through it. The sooner you can get through that phase of insecurity, not only is your life going to be better, by the way, you're going to be a better manager. I'm pretty sure that if you are on this call, you're going to be a leader very soon. I'm going to tell you, working for a manager who is insecure, okay, is the worst thing in the world. So don't be that leader. Don't be that insecure leader who's like still figuring his or her ego and insecurities out on you, right? So be that person who's just like very comfortable with their place in the world, so that your life is not only easier, but you make other people's lives easier.
Brilliant. We'd love to open it up to any other questions on the stream or on Remind. Obviously, would love to keep you on the line all day. Trust me, this has been.
I could chat all day.
It's awesome. I guess another question that I actually have. Curious to learn from an entrepreneur like you. Obviously, it's clear you're very open-minded. You're very much dedicated to the mission of Moneygirls. It's very much, I may not always know the perfect answer, but we're open to adapting to make sure we fulfill the mission. But in your eyes, where at least would you like to see Moneygirls going in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good question. For me, I think the community that is coalescing around Moneygirls, I'm like, they're the best of the best, right? Like, to me, they are the future leaders, future high earners, future investors. So I want this community to be able to influence the financial products of the future. So my mission, my obsession is, how do I ensure that every person who's engaging with Moneygirls, who's getting smart on what does debit versus credit mean? What does investing mean? What is a budget? What is a credit card? What's a bad credit score? Like, I want anyone who's thinking about this sort of at this life stage that you are right now to be the ones that influence what does a financial brand look like in the future? What products must you do? What must you do for me to accelerate my success? And so the way that I envision Money Girls is that we will build a financial brand that has so much insights into this critical kind of demographic that when we say this is how investing must be in the future, that other financial institutions will build it as such, right? That, and then the other thing is, I also want it to be such that when we have this conversation about money in our late teens, in our early 20s, that there will be no one and no product and nothing that is intimidating to you 10 years from now. That like no one can throw jargon at you or throw concepts at you or throw products at you where you're like, I don't know, should I sign up? What is this? And so I think ultimately the main thing is that I want to build a financial brand where the sort of best of the best in terms of being influential and being able to do things for good is part of.
Brilliant, brilliant. I think that just about wraps us up. What's potentially in case in the future students want to learn a little bit more about you, where can they find you?
Uh, I am on your team, you guys. Please reach out if I can be useful in any other way. So the first thing is head to moneygirls.com. I would love it if you signed up so that you can start being in conversation with us once a week through our newsletters, and please ask all the questions. I am at Judy at moneygirls.com. Our Instagram is Go Money Girls. Just become part of the community. I think the more that we know a diverse sort of set of people, and by diverse, I mean just life experiences and your own goals and ambitions, the more that we can adhere to our mission of building a financial brand that's super inclusive and cares about what do you want as you start out in your life, right? Versus, by the way, financial institutions, they love to wait until you're like 34 and you've got like $50,000 in savings, because then they're like, oh, well, you're more profitable as a human, right? So that's what we're out to do. So I'm so glad to have had the opportunity to talk to you guys. Thank you guys for the invitation. Please invite me back again. You guys are amazing.
Absolutely,
Keep doing the amazing
absolutely.
things that you are.
Appreciate it so much, and love your platform, love what you do. It's frankly incredibly inspiring as a young college student, and honestly, I can't even imagine how inspiring it must be for some of our viewers who are even younger than me. So it's a pleasure. Again, I can't thank you enough. On behalf of everyone at FGI, thank you so much for taking the time to meet
Yes.
with us, and
Yeah,
would definitely love to have you on in the future and keep in touch and have you a part of our team.
totally. Whatever and however the fall looks like for you guys, good luck.
Thank you so
Okay.
much, Judy.
All right.
Really appreciate it. See ya.
Bye.